I'm Gabriella, and I spent my childhood in a tiny Minnesota town right on a lake. Winters there, they felt like they'd never end, and everyone knew everyone else's business. When I was little, I thought my family was just, normal. My dad taught physics at the high school, and my mom was a nurse working nights at the county hospital. We weren't rolling in dough, but we weren't broke either. For a while, I was an only child, and I genuinely thought I was loved, like, in the way every kid should be. Mom used to brush my hair before she went to work, and Dad would take me fishing every weekend. On summer nights, the three of us would sit on the porch, eating ice cream, listening to the cicadas, just that calm night air. That, I thought, was what made a warm family. But it all changed on a freezing January night, right after I turned 8. I was jolted awake by banging on the door and headlights shining into the driveway. My Aunt Evelyn came in, looking all pale and worried, telling me to get a coat and a few things. Mom was at the hospital. She said my baby sister was born way too early and needed help. I was too young to really get it all, but I knew something was different. Everything changed that night. They named her Lily. She was this tiny, red little thing hooked up to tubes and machines, just lying there quietly in an incubator. I couldn't even go near her. "We can't risk her getting sick," Mom said, her eyes fixed on the heart monitor, and that was that. When I reached out to hold her hand, she kinda batted me away, like I was something dangerous too. Everything shifted once Lily got home. Our house morphed into this totally spotless place. Hand sanitizer everywhere, those air purifiers humming all the time, and the air was thick with bleach. I'd wake up choking in the night. Anytime I so much as coughed or sneezed, Mom would rush me off to Grandma's. At first, I thought it was a treat. Grandma baked the best apple pie and always had a new book for me. But slowly, I realized I wasn't welcome at my own house. I was basically seen as a threat to Lily, the golden child. All their dreams were wrapped up in her. I aced my first third-grade math test. I brought it home, wanting Mom to put it on the fridge, like she used to. She looked at it for a second, then turned to Dad, asking if he remembered to get tissues because Lily sounded a little congested. Dad just nodded and said, "Good job." No hug, no real smile, just done. I tried everything to get their attention back. I drew pictures, won first place at the school science fair, and told Mom all about these cool things I was reading about. But every single time, the answer was always the same. Lily had a slight fever. Lily was napping. Lily needed quiet. "Gabriella, be quiet, please." I eventually just learned to fade away. I stayed in my room, always smelling strongly of peppermint oil. Lily hated that smell, so it kept her out. It was my one safe space. That's where I got lost in art history antiques, all those stories hidden in old paintings. But worse than being ignored, they started changing the past, twisting things around. "Gabriella's always been so strong and independent," Mom would tell the neighbors after I got into the gifted program. "She understands Lily needs extra attention." No, I didn't understand. All I knew was that I used to have a family. And then, poof, gone. It hit me slowly. They never expected anything from me. Not praise, not hugs, not even a proud look. It was all for Lily. They figured I didn't need any of that. "Gabriella's the type who takes care of herself," Mom would say if anyone asked about me. But being independent doesn't mean you don't need love. When I was in 8th grade, I applied for a job at Sugar Pines Bakery. Mrs. Lorraine, the owner, was the first person outside my family who actually saw me. She never questioned why a 13-year-old wanted to mop floors and sell pastries after school. She just put her hand on my shoulder and said, "If you work hard, you deserve your place." I'll never forget that. Every afternoon after school, I'd go to the bakery, tie my hair back, and start wiping tables, washing trays, taking orders. At home, I'd quietly do my homework at my little desk in the corner of my room. Nobody ever bothered to ask where I'd been when I finally came home, or what I was up to. As long as I didn't freak Lily out with the smell of soap, that was fine. Lily was a whole different story. She didn't have to work ever. Cleaning her books? Nah, not her thing. And a bakery? Only if it was for her birthday cake. Every single time Lily had something going on, a presentation, a church play, whatever, the whole family was there, cameras rolling, flowers in hand, me. When I aced the SATs, Mom just mumbled, "That's good," and kept slicing fruit for Lily because she was low on vitamin C. Senior year, I applied to 12 colleges. I didn't breathe a word to anyone. I hammered out those essays during my breaks at the bakery, and Mrs. Lorraine helped me out. She actually taught me how to write from the heart, she called it. I got my own letters of recommendation, filled out all the financial aid stuff myself, and even figured out that FAFSA thing on my own. Every single step was done by myself quietly, but I never felt unsure of myself. I never counted on my parents for college, so I applied for every scholarship I could find. Merit-based, need-based, first generation, every single application was my little way of saying, "See me, I'm here." I worked all summer, saved every penny from tips, even stuffed my piggy bank with change to get a bus ticket to a scholarship interview in another state. Then one afternoon, I was wiping down the bakery counter like usual, and I got an email. Northwestern, full ride, I was in. The smell of freshly baked cookies hit me, sweet and warm, and I just stood there, tears welling up, grinning like an idiot. Mrs. Lorraine squeezed me tight, like I was family. It was the first time I ever cried because someone was actually happy for me. That night, I took the acceptance letter home and showed it to Mom. She took a quick look at it and put it down on the table. "Congrats," she said. "But don't tell Lily, she's got a lot going on." I just nodded, folded the letter up, and shoved it in my pocket. Then I went upstairs while Lily was downstairs, laughing about her brand new ballet shoes from some fancy store I wouldn't have dreamed of going in. A few weeks later, the whole family had a little party because Lily won second place in an art contest. Dad even put her drawing up in the living room with a plaque that said the family's talent. I looked at the picture, this pink cat on a rainbow, then at my essay that a college professor had said was exceptional beyond expectation, now hidden away in my desk. That's when it hit me. No matter what I did, I'd always be the kid who never caused any problems. And Lily, even though she was just normal, would always be the star. But this time, I had a way out, and I promised myself they'd never be able to brush me aside again. I decided to study art history at Northwestern, a little bit because I loved it, but mostly because I was done letting anyone else decide my path. Thinking about Art Deco, those fancy European families, and all the hidden meanings in old jewelry, it takes me right back to Grandma's. She'd let me rummage through her boxes and boxes of old brooches, necklaces, the whole shebang. Every time I went over, it was the same thing. I can still picture this swan-shaped hairpin, these pale lavender stones. I was just a kid. I didn't know if it was worth anything, but the way the light caught those gems, it took my breath away. I'd spend ages by the window, just staring at it, like it was the most precious thing in the world. Now I get it. That feeling you get around antiques, it's not just being fascinated. It's something deeper, a gut feeling, and it's something I trust completely. After college, I graduated with honors. By the way, I landed this unpaid internship at a tiny jewelry appraisal place in Chicago. My friends were all off chasing big jobs in media or finance, but me. I was in a back room, carefully putting on those white gloves, peering through a magnifying glass, photographing every little scratch on rings nobody else cared about. At the time, I had no idea those forgotten pieces would end up changing everything for me. Then came this brooch. It was listed as just costume jewelry, maybe worth a few bucks at most. But the second I touched it, something clicked. It was simple, but the detail was amazing. The engraving was perfect, the enamel flawless. And on the back, this tiny almost gone mark. I spent the entire night researching that little mark. So it turned out the brooch was from a French jewelry maker who crafted stuff for the rich folks way back in the early 1900s. His shop got wrecked during the war. Not only was the brooch the real deal, but it was super hard to find. I shared what I'd found in a little meeting with my bosses. I wasn't trying to brag, but I put every ounce of excitement I had into it. I showed them old papers, compared the designs, and even got a friend from the university library to help me dig up old records from a museum database. What happened? The brooch's value was bumped up to $12,000, and when it went up for auction at the antique showcase in Seattle, it sold for over 40 grand. That was the first time they mentioned my name in the company email, just a little note saying something nice. Gabriella has a sharp eye. I kept working like it was no big deal, but more and more pieces that were misidentified started falling into my lap. Once, it was a cloisonné enamel necklace that they thought was a fake, but it was actually an original by a Russian artist from the 1800s. Another time, it was a platinum wedding ring that everyone thought was a regular old thing. Turns out, it was a limited edition design, one of only 30 made for a famous family in Boston to celebrate their anniversary. I started getting assigned to bigger collections. My supervisor, Margaret, asked me to lunch for the first time. While we were eating tart, she asked, "Gabriella, have you ever thought about going out on your own?" I chuckled, thinking she was messing with me. So there I was, this girl who'd been working for free for 2 whole years, living off ramen. I remember this one time, this woman looked at me, all sideways, eyes like daggers. She said something that really hit me: the people who are starving are the ones who find the most amazing food, you know. It made me think. I started taking on tiny jobs, authenticating things. Pawn shops, little family-run antique stores, places that couldn't spring for the big city appraisal companies. I didn't charge much, but I was thorough. Super careful, patient as could be, never cutting corners. One evening, I dragged myself back to my crummy fourth-floor apartment. I opened my closet, and there was this notebook Grandma had left me. The first page, all scribbled in her messy hand, said, "It's not the rare thing, it's the person who sees it as treasure." That's when it hit me. I had been invisible, even to myself, for so long. But now, every little thing I examined, every object I touched, that was me, remaking myself. I made a vow, right then and there: no more letting anyone underestimate me. I wouldn't let anyone overlook my value, just like I'd learned not to overlook the real value of something hidden away, covered in dust and forgotten by time. I started my own business that fall when I turned 27. Nobody knew. Honestly, nobody even cared to ask. My family still thought I was doing some temp job or whatever. Like my whole life was just a big, long, confusing pause between Lily's latest phase. I got this tiny office, maybe 300 square feet, on the third floor of this old building in Milwaukee. It was above a little Italian place and next to a dentist's office that had closed down. My furniture: a rickety desk held up by a box of files, a chair I fished out of a dumpster and cleaned up real good, and a lamp I snagged from a flea market. Each time I flipped the switch, the light bulb would give a little click, almost like it was also questioning my dream. I called the company Orem and Iris Orem for gold, and Iris after the flower my mom always grew in the yard before Lily came along. And then, silence, like everything just died. The start was a real struggle. I took on whatever I could get the little guys. An old lady wanted me to check her engagement ring from back in the Depression. A local antique dealer needed help telling real platinum apart from the fake stuff. I wasn't charging as much as the big guys, but my work was super detailed, looking at everything from gemstone details under a microscope to tracing the jewelry's history, tracking down the past. Word of mouth started working. One referral became two. Then I got calls from estate lawyers, private collectors, and even a small museum in the area. They needed me to appraise some inherited jewelry, stuff that had never had a professional look. In my second year, I moved to a bigger office. This time, it was on the ground floor, with a big glass window and a real sign, but it was still right around the corner from the Italian place. I hired my first employee, Maya, a recent geology grad, with sparkly eyes and tons of patience for really tiny stones. I showed her how to check out gemstone cuts using those filament bulbs, how to see if something was handcrafted just by looking, and the most important thing, how to trust your gut. Everything picked up speed way faster than I figured. By year 5, I had 3 offices running, in Milwaukee, Minneapolis, and Denver. We were dealing with customers all over, from back east to the west coast, verifying the real deal in million-dollar auctions, and digging up lost collections from old storage units, safe deposit boxes, and even dusty attics. Back then, I was worth over $12 million, and that didn't even factor in close to another million that was tied up in contracts I was supposed to be authenticating. Even with all that, I was still kicking it in a little house out in the burbs, driving a boring silver SUV and rocking an ancient phone. It wasn't that I was trying to save money, I just didn't feel like I needed to show off. My family didn't have a clue. As far as they were concerned, I was just Gabriella, the hard-headed daughter who wouldn't get a real job, who somehow made a living messing around with old junk and was always MIA at dinner, because she was probably busy dusting antiques again. I still made those Sunday dinners, still heard Mom gushing about how Lily had switched her college major again, this time to animal behavior psychology, and how she might have finally found her calling. I still had Dad suggesting I apply for a job at the local high school, because, the benefits were good. I'd also watch Lily scrolling through her Instagram mid-conversation, flashing a new designer bag she claimed she snagged on sale, even though one look told me it was a limited edition, never even marked down. Whenever they asked what I was up to, I'd just give them a little smile and say, "Oh, the usual. A little authentication work, some vintage stuff." No one really pressed for specifics. Nobody ever picked up on the fact that the pearl necklace I had on was once owned by some fancy British lady back in the day, or that the ruby hairpin was a super rare design from the early 1900s. They all figured it was just junk from a yard sale. I never bothered to correct them. One time, Lily cracked a joke at dinner about how I probably had enough necklaces to open my own store. I just grinned, poured myself some OJ, and said, "Who knows, right? Truth is, I could have spilled everything." That I was involved in some of the biggest authentication cases around here, that my company just landed a deal with the National Museum, that I was asked to write for a leading gemology journal, and that the bracelet Lily was wearing was a total fake. But I didn't say anything, because sometimes you get to be invisible and powerful at the same time. I started sending money to my parents towards the end of my 5th year in business. It started at 3 grand a month, then went up to 5, and then 7, after Lily's sudden tuition costs shot up after she changed her major for the 5th time, this time to interior design, which was exactly what I'd always wanted to do, but couldn't because we couldn't afford it. Mom called me one Saturday night, her voice getting all soft after the usual thank yous. "Lily's really finding herself, you know," she said. "But Parsons is expensive and your father, teachers don't make enough," she was saying. I was at my desk going over papers for a $400,000 appraisal of antique jewelry, nodding like I was just thinking about some cheap bread. "Could you lend a hand?" she asked. After a second I was like, "How much are we talking about a month?" $7,000, but only for a bit. Once Lily's done with school, she'll help out the whole family. I didn't say anything about how Lily hadn't finished anything in the last 6 years. I didn't even bring up why they hadn't thought about scholarships or getting a part-time job. Instead, I logged into my business account and set up a recurring monthly payment of $7,000, labeled it Family Support Tuition Assistance. Every time the money left my account, I'd tell myself, it's not because they deserve it, but because I can. Not everyone has that option, Jessica Felix. I kept up the act, pretending not to hear Mom telling the neighbors, "Gabriella is so cheap, she basically lives on soup and the bus," pretending not to see Lily's vacation photos from Cabo with fancy bags, captioned, "I deserve this after a hard semester." One Sunday dinner, I just cut into the roast when Lily gave me the smirk. She said, "You ever think about an MBA, Gab? Might help with that little antique shop job." Mom didn't crack a smile, she just nodded like she was deep in thought. "She's right, everyone has a master's now. If you went back, you might get a better job." I didn't say a word, just took a drink of water. The glass was a little misty, and I was picturing the new gallery in New York, the one I just signed the contract for last week, a cool $2.5 million project, and I was in charge of making sure all the jewelry was real. But they didn't need to know. They never wanted to. Lily still thought I was living off what our parents had saved. One time, at her boyfriend's party, after a few cocktails, she just blurted it out to her friends. "My sister, I have no clue why she's still into all that old, outdated stuff. My parents are still helping her with rent." Out of like feeling sorry for her. One of her friends, who also happened to be an old client of mine, told me exactly what she said later. I remember laughing when I heard it. Not because I was upset, not because I was mad, just blank. That feeling when you're at the top, looking down, and your family is still down at the bottom, not even trying to climb, but expecting you to throw them a rope. I kept quiet, just like those old antique pieces I once found hidden in a bunch of trash. Sometimes, being quiet is what makes something truly valuable. But things started to change when Lily got a new car. A super rare BMW sports car. She put it on Instagram with a caption about rewarding herself after a tough semester. "Hard work pays off," she wrote. That car, I knew, was more than 90 grand, and I also knew no student at Parsons could get that without some kind of help. That day, Mom called, her voice full of pride. "Did you see, honey? Lily's doing so great. She's managing everything herself now, which is impressive. There's a real chance she could do great things." I didn't say anything, but this time I was just done. One thought just kept ringing in my head. When will they really see me? Not this idea of me they had. I wasn't going to host Thanksgiving that year. Honestly, I was thinking of just vanishing somewhere by myself. But then Mom called, and she sounded so weak. "I haven't been feeling well, Gabriella. And nobody really wants to cook this year. Everyone's looking forward to the holiday, you know," I knew. Looking forward to a meal nobody had to lift a finger to make. But everyone would definitely notice if I wasn't there. I took a moment before saying back, "I'll handle it. You just rest." Truthfully, I'd already reached out to this fancy catering company from Chicago, the same one I used when I had to put together those events for the company. They did private dinners for people, customizing menus where everything was just a masterpiece, from how it was arranged on the plate to the spices they used. I paid for everything with my company's card that I kept separate. Nobody knew, nobody questioned it. They all just thought what they wanted. I knew a few chefs. On Thanksgiving morning, I showed up early. The catering crew arrived about an hour later, with their portable ovens, all the silver trays, and even a tablescape designer. Lily saw them and whispered to Mom, "Isn't she taking it a bit too far? Trying to impress someone, I guess." I just smiled a little. Impress. I didn't have to try to please anyone anymore. All I craved was a decent dinner. Forget the dried-out turkey, the mashed potatoes that were basically baby food, and gravy so salty it made your face pucker. But dinner was ready when it was supposed to be. Around 20 people crammed into the house. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, some cousins I barely knew, and naturally, Lily with her new boyfriend. They were all making a big deal over every single plate. I didn't say much, just smiled and kept refilling wine glasses. Halfway through the meal, I quietly snuck upstairs to my old room to keep an eye on a live auction going on in Tokyo. A client I'd worked with for years was bidding on a super rare gemstone set from the Meiji era. I couldn't afford to get sidetracked. I turned on my laptop, fired up the authentication software, and followed the bids while talking to my assistant through a Bluetooth headset. Then out of nowhere, Lily just walks right in without even knocking. "Do you have an iPhone charger? My phone is about to die," she asked without giving me a chance to answer, her eyes already glued to the screen where the graphs and numbers were shining bright. Her eyes got wide, then narrowed. She gave me a little smirk. "Mind if I borrow this? Let's show everyone how cool your little antique business is." Before I could even get up, she grabbed the laptop and headed straight for the dining room. "Guys, check out what Gabriella is doing on Thanksgiving," she yelled as I ran after her. "Hurry up." She spun the screen around for everyone to see. Nobody said a word, so there I was, staring at my laptop. Open browser tabs showed my bank account $12,600,000. Plus a $400,000 contract waiting for my approval. And the latest company report, over $4 million bucks in profit. It was dead silent. You know, that kind of quiet where you can hear a pin drop. Then Mom broke the ice. She chuckled nervously, swallowed a bite of turkey, and shook her head. "Gabriella's probably just helping someone with some paperwork, right, honey?" she said, trying to be all casual. I took a deep breath, smoothed out my shirt, and planted myself in the middle of the room. "No, Mom," I said. "That contract, that's me signing it. I'm the CEO of ORAM and Iris." I explained, "My company's got 3 offices in 3 different states. We specialize in authenticating old jewelry and other valuable stuff. Everything you're seeing is real." A spoon clattered to the floor. Aunt Evelyn's mouth hung open. Dad leaned back, sweat beading on his forehead. Lily was white-knuckling the table, her voice all shaky. You have that kind of money and you didn't say a word," she cried. "Mom and Dad are drowning in debt because of me, and I'm still in school." I turned to Mom. "I've been sending you $7,000 a month for over 2 years," I told her. "Didn't you ever wonder where it was coming from?" Her face went completely white. Dad's face turned bright red. Lily just started sobbing. "I have a right to know," she yelled, her voice trembling. "I'm your sister. Family's supposed to share, right?" I just looked at them all, speechless. The people who used to treat me like I was nothing, the ones who looked down on me while they were practically living off my hard work. I spoke up, real quiet, but they heard me. "Family isn't about dragging around those who always think they're better than you." I shut the laptop and headed for the exit. Someone behind me started shouting about responsibilities and things, but I didn't give them the satisfaction of turning around. All I could feel was my heart thumping steady, like that old gold watch of mine, still ticking even after all these years. No hugs. Nobody said, "Gab, we're proud of you." No congrats. Not even a real smile. Then, after a long, awkward silence, the first thing I heard was my mom, and her words hit me hard. "You've got all that money and you let your parents struggle. What about your sister?" I didn't even get a chance to respond before Lily started bawling, tears just streaming down her face. "I deserve to know. I'm your sister. You kept everything hidden and you just watched us suffer." Suffer. I let out a short, bitter laugh. "You call flying business, wearing a Cartier and driving a BMW suffering?" My dad, who hadn't said a word until now, slammed his hand on the table. "That's enough. No matter what, you're still part of this family. Families share. You should be ashamed of yourself for keeping this from us." I looked around the table. Their eyes weren't filled with any kind of love. They were staring at me like I was a safe they just figured out how to break into. For 2 whole years, I sent Mom and you 7 grand a month. Every time you called, all tears and saying you were drowning, I just sent the money. I never asked questions, never laid down any rules. That's how I get repaid. Why didn't you say anything? Mom snapped. Why didn't you tell us you were doing so well? Were you afraid we'd depend on you? Or did you just want it all for yourself? I gripped my glass tighter, keeping my voice even because I'm used to being ignored. Ever since Lily was born, I've been an afterthought. Every award, every perfect test score, poof, gone because your sister needed a nap. I looked straight at Mom. Remember when I got a perfect SAT score, or that full scholarship? Dad, remember my graduation? No one showed. You were all too busy watching Lily's preschool ballet recital. Mom's hands shook. She tried to say something, but nothing came out. And now, the minute you find out I actually did something you all thought I couldn't, you're mad because I didn't tell you. That's not it, Lily jumped in. I'm just shocked, betrayed, you didn't trust me. I looked at my sister, my voice quiet. You never trusted me, you always saw me as your shadow. You made fun of my work in front of your friends. You told them I lived off Mom and Dad when I paid for every single semester you were in school, every vacation you showed off on social media. Lily froze, her eyes wide. She thought I was clueless, you know. Gabriella, my mom said, her voice all shaky, I'm not trying to start a fight, but you can't just sit on all that money and pretend everything's normal. We need help. She said the family needed help. Specifically, she wanted me to help Lily start her interior design business. Use my money for a dream she's never even really tried to pursue, I asked. I opened my purse, got out my phone, did a few taps and said, real firm, I just canceled the automatic transfers. The room blew up. My mom shrieked. Gabriella, you can't, your dad and I were depending on that money. Lily hasn't even finished school yet. Then maybe it's time to figure something else out, I shot back. I've been on my own since I was 17, if I could do it, so can you guys. I stood up, my chair crashing to the floor. Nobody stopped me, but I still looked back. If the only reason you all want me around is for my money, I said, then I'm sorry. But I'm done buying love, I don't need it. I walked out, leaving them whispering behind me. I heard someone mention a lawyer, and another voice said I'd regret this. But when I shut that heavy door, all I felt was this huge wave of relief. I'd walked out of Thanksgiving dinner. Nobody even noticed me go, and for the first time ever, I didn't feel one bit guilty about putting myself first. That night, back in my apartment, my phone just wouldn't stop buzzing. It was like someone was holding down the call button. Texts kept pouring in. The first few texts were from Mom. She kept saying things like, Gabriella, you're making things so much worse. And we need to talk, Lily's falling apart. Can't you see she's completely lost hope? She went on and on about family being where you belong, not something to walk away from. Then came Dad. He was so much colder, all measured and formal. He basically said, I don't even recognize you anymore, this isn't how you treat family. Then, message number 37 from Lily. It just said, you're wrecking everything. You're gonna regret this. I flipped my phone over, face down on the table, like that would somehow magically make the whole mess disappear. But nope. The next day, my work emails were flooded with spam, and it was all from people I knew. Uncles, distant cousins, even my dad's friend's wife, the one who used to say, Gabriella's sweet, even if she's not the sharpest tool in the shed. I had to get a lawyer. His name was Marcus, and he'd handled some huge cases for my company, dealing with family fights over money and stuff. I showed him all the texts, and he just nodded, his face not giving anything away. He said, you need a clean break, completely separate from them financially and legally. He promised to write the official "Stop Bothering Me" letters that day. We sent them out to everyone on that awful list, demanding they stop the harassment, threats, and all the demands for money. I asked Marcus to add a line, something simple and direct, not all legal mumbo-jumbo. I wanted it to say, love, if it's real, doesn't come with a price tag. A week later, Lily put a weird, cryptic post on social media. It started, not everyone with money has a good heart, and she put up a bunch of old photos with it. Those photos, me holding her as a tiny baby, me at her high school graduation, that goofy grin at her 17th birthday dinner, the whole post felt like a desperate plea for pity, you know. People were totally divided in the comments. Some were brutal, calling me a heartless cash machine, basically. Others were all, why's an MBA student playing the victim with 8-year-old photos? I didn't even bother replying. I just went to my closet, dug out this old wooden box, and pulled out Grandma Marie's necklace. It's vintage, a single pearl on this faded gold chain. She gave it to me when I was 15. I put it on, felt like I was wearing a piece of the strength she'd given me all these years. Grandma was the only one I hadn't cut off. When I called her and told her everything, she wasn't shocked at all. She just let out this long sigh. "You finally did what you should have done ages ago," she said. I didn't say anything. She went on, real slow and steady. "Gabriella, family isn't the people who hold you back when you're trying to spread your wings. You've been living in their shadow long enough. It's time you found your own sunshine." The next week, I asked her to come stay for a few days. She showed up with a little suitcase and a tin of her homemade butter cookies. We sat in the living room, going through this amazing gem collection I'd just gotten from Switzerland. And there she was, the woman who taught me to spot a fake gem with just a glance, smiling like the whole world had finally fallen into place. Then I changed all my phone numbers. They erased my home address from the company's files. My secretary got orders not to let anyone in, even if they said they were family, unless they had an appointment. I rented a new office in a secure complex, with security guards and fingerprint access. One Monday, as I was drinking coffee and looking over the exhibit design, Marcus called. "Things have calmed down, it seems," he said. I just smiled, because I knew the quiet wasn't agreement. It was them not wanting to deal with it. But it didn't matter anymore. I didn't need their approval, I just needed to stop asking for it. My grandma used to say, "A real gem doesn't need to brag. It just needs to not get lost in the junk." I was finally in the right place, and I wasn't going back into hiding. I moved into my new house in early March. It was a simple, mid-century villa just outside of Madison, Wisconsin, with a view of Lake Mendota. Nothing fancy, but it was quiet and private. It had a security fence, smart cameras, and a jewelry vault built like a bank safe room. I set up my office myself. I put in a warm amber desk lamp, a comfy leather chair, and an old mahogany bookshelf I found at a bookstore that was closing. The smell brought me back to reading Nancy Drew in Grandma's attic when I was a kid. For the first time ever, I could just be. I didn't have to hide who I was or pretend to be less successful to make everyone else feel okay. No more side eye from my mom. No more of Lily's digs, like how my necklace looked cheap. Gone were the Sunday dinners where I had to act like everything was fine. I was totally myself, and it was like that filled every empty space I had. And you know what? The business actually got even better after everything went down. Some old clients reached out once they saw Lily's vague posts online. They didn't pry. Actually, some of them trusted me even more because I'd kept everything private all those years. Then, a famous fashion designer called, needing me to authenticate a vintage jewelry collection for a big show in New York. A huge European museum asked if I'd work with them on restoring a lost treasure from the 1700s. I hired 2 more appraisal experts, made our Denver office bigger, and inked deals with 3 international auction houses. During a planning session, my CFO paused before saying, "Gabriella, we could buy out a smaller company down south. If you're game, this is when we really make a move." I smiled. I'd never really wanted power. What I'd always wanted was to be free. One morning, I sat by the window upstairs with a mug of hot tea, watching the mist roll over the lake. Grandma was out in the yard, giving the plants a drink, still sporting her favorite light blue cardigan. She'd stayed with me longer than she'd planned, and I hadn't stopped her. Know what I'm most proud of? She asked me one night while we were in my office, sorting through gemstones. I just stared at her. She didn't say anything about my job or how much money I made. Instead, she said I'd stayed true to myself, even when things got tough. That really stuck with me, and I spent days thinking about it, all the times I kept my mouth shut so I wouldn't hurt anyone's feelings. The nights I'd come home with my shoulders slumped, thinking I had to be perfect to be worth noticing. The years I worked myself to the bone, just to be seen. Now, I didn't need anyone else's approval because I had already proved to the person who mattered most, myself, that I was good enough. One day, while I was taking inventory for a restoration, I found the pale lavender swan hairpin Grandma used to keep in that old box. I'd held on to it for years, not because it was valuable, but because it marked the beginning of everything. I put it in a blue velvet box and wrote a little note on the card for the girl who once felt invisible. "You became the kind of light no one saw coming." I put that box on the top shelf in my private gallery as a reminder that I didn't start with any advantages. I started with being overlooked. Not long after that, I got asked to speak at an international conference about heritage and appraisals in Paris. This time, I didn't hesitate. I just wasn't scared anymore about what others thought, or if standing in the spotlight would make someone in my family feel less. I was using my real name, representing the business I'd created from scratch, sporting the white gold ring Grandma gave me. I had a quiet sense of pride, the kind you get when you've been underestimated but never forgot who you are. Gabriella's story is a serious lesson. Sometimes, the hardest thing you can do is walk away from your own family to find what's real and true for yourself. Not everyone is lucky enough to be born into a loving family, but every single person deserves to decide to not stay stuck in the darkness of unfairness. Gabriella didn't just build a successful career from nothing. She figured out how to truly love herself without needing anyone else's okay, especially the people who had caused her pain. That's what real healing looks like. That's actual freedom. What do you make of Gabriella's decision? Do you think she overreacted, or was it the only path for her to honor her own value? Share your thoughts below.